I walked into my son's wedding expecting joy. But one cruel word on a place card changed everything. This is not just a story about humiliation, it's about dignity, boundaries, and the quiet strength to rebuild respect. If you believe every voice deserves to be heard, subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. Your story matters too. I thought I was ready for that day. I arrived early, corsage pinned carefully to my dress, and tried to keep myself unnoticed. I told myself it wasn't about MIT, was about my son. But when I walked into the reception hall, I felt eyes land on me, quiet whispers, quick glances. I sat down, straightened my shoulders, and tried to smile through it. Then I saw the nameplate. There it was, sitting neatly at the table, my name, written in perfect calligraphy, and beneath it, 2 words that sliced deeper than anything I'd prepared myself for. Charity case. It was supposed to be a day of joy, a day to celebrate the man I'd raised. But in that instant, it became something else entirely. Not just embarrassment, not just hurt. It became a mirror showing me exactly what my new daughter-in-law and the family she came from really thought of me. I felt laughter ripple behind me. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Cruelty rarely is. A few chuckles, a mocking smile, the soft murmur of someone finding amusement in another person's humiliation. I held my breath, placed the card down slowly, and forced my face to remain calm. "Are you all right?" one of the servers asked quietly, noticing how still I'd gone. "I'm fine," I whispered back, though my voice betrayed me. I wasn't fine at all. In that moment, I had a choice. I could stay, swallow it down, and let myself be the joke of the evening, or I could walk out, not just from the table, but from the role they'd written for me without my consent. I chose the walkout. I whispered a blessing in my heart, for my son, for the marriage, for whatever future they might build, and then I left. No scene, no confrontation, no tears shed in front of them. I walked through the laughter, through the chandeliers and polished silver, and stepped into the parking lot where the night was quieter, colder, and honest. There, with my hands shaking against the steering wheel, I let myself feel it, the humiliation, the sting of being reduced to a caricature of struggle, when the truth of my life had always been so much more than they would ever bother to know. My son had no idea. He was too busy smiling inside, caught in the glow of his new bride, and maybe that was how it should be, at least for now. I stayed in the car until the shaking eased, until the anger gave way to something heavier, resolve. That night, in the quiet of my small apartment, I wrote him a message. Not long, not bitter, just enough to hold on to my dignity without forcing him into a choice between me and her. "I love you. I'm proud of you. I'll step back for now until respect has a place in this family." I didn't send it immediately. I read it over a dozen times, fingers hovering above the screen, wondering if silence might be easier. But silence is dangerous. It lets people decide the story for you. And I wasn't willing to let that card, that moment, define me. So I pressed send. When I put my phone down, I sat at the kitchen table with the lamp on, and the room still. For years, I had bent myself into smaller shapes so I could fit into rooms where I wasn't welcomed. I had said thank you when I should have said enough. I had let laughter wash over me, pretending it didn't leave a stain. But something changed the second I walked out of that reception. I realized I wasn't just leaving a wedding that night. I was leaving behind the habit of letting other people tell me who I was. The irony was, they thought the words on that card would define me as less, but they became something else entirely. A line I would never cross again. I went to bed late, unable to sleep, staring at the ceiling with the echo of those 2 words still burning. Charity case. They wanted me to wear it like a NAMA tag. Instead, I decided to wear something else. My silence, my choice, my refusal to play along. I didn't know what would happen next. Whether my son would call, whether that family would ever acknowledge what they had done, whether bridges could be rebuilt. But I knew one thing with certainty. I had walked out, and in walking out, I had walked into something new, something I hadn't allowed myself in a long time, a place where my dignity didn't depend on anyone else's permission. The laughter was behind me now, and ahead of me, though I couldn't see it yet, was a different kind of voice, my own. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table with a mug of coffee gone cold. Sunlight spilled across the counter, catching on the scratches of years of use. It should have been an ordinary Sunday, but my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Missed calls, voicemails, a string of messages from numbers I didn't recognize, and from one I knew by heart, my son's. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over it, but I didn't answer. Not yet. I wasn't punishing him. I was protecting myself. Boundaries were new to me, unfamiliar, like shoes that still pinched. For so long I had answered every call, responded to every request, filled every gap, no matter the cost to me. But the moment I walked out of that wedding, I decided things would be different. I folded laundry instead, the simple rhythm steadying my hands. One shirt, one towel, one pair of socks. Life's ordinary tasks carried their own dignity. I reminded myself my worth had never been measured in chandeliers or champagne. Still, the phone kept ringing. Finally, I took a slow walk around the block, the air crisp enough to sting my cheeks. I let my body move, while my mind wrestled with the words I knew would be waiting on the other end of that call. By the time I returned home, I was steadier. Only then did I press the button and hold the phone to my ear. "Mom." His voice cracked with relief. "I've been trying to reach you. Are you all right?" I could hear the panic underneath, but also the hesitation, the uncertainty of a man caught between the woman he married and the mother who raised him. "I'm all right," I said, though my throat tightened. "But I won't pretend yesterday didn't happen." Silence, a long one, the kind that made me realize he had no ready defense. "She shouldn't have done that," he admitted finally, his voice lower. "I didn't know until people told me after you left. I didn't see it." "That's the problem, Michael," I whispered. "You didn't see it." The words hung between us. I could feel the weight of them pressing down on both sides of the line. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "She's under a lot of stress with the wedding planning." And I closed my eyes. There it was, the excuse. I could almost picture his face, caught between love and loyalty, trying to smooth edges that had cut me deep. "This isn't about stress," I told him quietly. "This is about respect. And until it's present, I can't be." Silence stretched again, heavier. This time, he breathed in sharply, then let it out. "So, what does that mean? You're just gone?" "No," I said. "It means I'm stepping back. For now." It hurt to say it, but it felt necessary, like setting a broken bone, even when it aches. He sighed. "Mom, I love you. You know that, right?" "I know," I whispered. "And that's why I'm telling you the truth." We ended the call without solutions, only an ache that lingered in my chest. I placed the phone on the table and stared at the chipped edge of my coffee mug. This was not the motherhood I imagined: silences, boundaries, the distance of decisions. But motherhood, like life, changes form. Sometimes it becomes less about protection and more about honesty. The rest of the day unfolded quietly. I washed the dishes, cooked a small meal, and let the hours pass without reaching for anyone else's approval. At dusk, I sat on the couch with an old blanket, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. My life had always been simple, but never empty. And that night, I decided simplicity would be enough. Yet, under the stillness was a question that refused to leave me. Had I done the right thing? I thought of the laughter at the table, the way the words on that card had been written so carefully, as if humiliation were part of the decor. I thought of my son's voice on the phone, torn between love and blind loyalty. And I thought of myself sitting alone, but not defeated. I realized then that walking out wasn't the end of a moment. It was the beginning of a new season. A season where I would no longer explain myself into smallness. Where I would no longer accept apologies without change. Where silence would no longer be my only form of survival. By the time I went to bed, I had stopped replaying the laughter in my mind. In its place was something steadier. Not peace yet, but a direction. The phone was still full of unanswered messages. I let them stay there. Tomorrow, maybe, I'd listen. But tonight, I allowed myself the dignity of rest. And in the stillness of that small kitchen, I realized something I hadn't said out loud yet. I wasn't afraid of being alone. I was only afraid of living without self-respect. That fear had already been answered. 4 days later, I agreed to meet my son. Not at a house filled with her family, not at a restaurant chosen to impress, but at a plain cafe downtown, where the air smelled of coffee grounds and burnt toast, and no one cared who you were. It was neutral ground. No chandeliers, no place cards, just chipped mugs and laminated menus. I got there first, slid into a booth near the window, and folded my hands on the table. My heart beat harder than I wanted to admit, but there was a steadiness under it too. This time, I wasn't walking into their world. He was walking into mine. Doc Michael came in late, looking tired, his tie loosened, his hair falling into his face like he hadn't slept well. He spotted me, exhaled, and walked over quickly. Mom, he sat down, trying to smile. Thank you for meeting me. I nodded. Of course, he ordered coffee he didn't touch. I could see he'd rehearsed something. The way his hands kept rubbing together, the way his eyes darted to the side as if reading lines written on the wall. I let him speak first. I know Saturday was wrong, he began. I should have seen it sooner. I should have protected you. He hesitated, then sighed. Vanessa feels awful. She says it was a joke that got out of hand. A joke, the word felt heavy in the air. I kept my face calm. She laughed when I walked out. I said quietly, that didn't look like regret to me. His shoulders slumped. I know, I'm not excusing it. I don't know how to balance this. Mom, I love her. And I love you. I don't want to lose either of you. I leaned back, studying him. My boy, 42 years old, with lines at the corners of his eyes that spoke of long hours and real responsibility. But, in that moment, he looked younger, like the boy who used to glance at me from the pitcher's mound, waiting for a nod of reassurance. Michael, I said slowly, this isn't about choosing between us. It's about recognizing what's acceptable. I don't need to be first in her eyes. I just refuse to be beneath her feet. He looked down at the table, ashamed. You're right. The server came by, refilled our cups, and left us in silence. Around us the cafe carried on, dishes clattering, conversations rising and falling. Ordinary life, no performance. I've been thinking a lot these past few days, I told him, and I realized something. I can't control how people treat me in their homes, at their parties, at their weddings, but I can control what I accept. That card wasn't just paper, it was a message, and I heard it loud and clear. He swallowed hard. So what happens now? I held his gaze. Now, we build something different. Smaller, maybe, quieter, but honest. He nodded slowly, understanding more than he wanted to. I'm not asking you to fight her battles or mine, I continued. I'm asking you to see clearly. If she wants to be part of this family, respect must be the foundation, not wealth, not status, not appearances. Respect. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. He sat with his head in his hands, elbows resting on the table. I sipped my coffee, letting him absorb it. Finally, he lifted his eyes. What if she doesn't change? Then you'll have your answer, I said softly. Not about her, about yourself. About what you're willing to live with. He let out a shaky breath. That's not easy, Mom. No, I agreed. It never is. We sat there for another half hour, talking in circles and pauses, sometimes lapsing into silence. He wanted me to say it would all work out, that forgiveness was simple, that wounds healed quickly if ignored, but I couldn't offer that. I wouldn't. When the check came, I reached for it. He tried to stop me. Mom, please let me. I shook my head. No, this one's mine. I chose this meeting. I chose this place. And I'm choosing to pay for my own seat at this table. He looked at me for a long time, then nodded. Something in his face shifted, not defeat, but recognition. We stood to leave. He hugged me tightly, the way he used to before leaving for college. He held on longer than usual. I love you, he whispered. I know, I whispered back. That's why we'll get through this. But only if honesty sits with us. When I stepped out into the afternoon light, I didn't feel lighter, but I did feel clearer. For the first time in years, I'd spoken without folding myself smaller. I hadn't begged to belong. I hadn't asked for approval. It wasn't about winning or losing. It was about reclaiming ground I should never have given up. As I walked away from the cafe, I realized the meeting had been less about Vanessa and more about me. For once, I had chosen the setting, I had chosen the terms, and in that choice, I had taken back a measure of control. I didn't know I'd lost it. Wasn't revenge, it wasn't triumph, it was dignity. Quiet, steady, mine. I didn't wait for a grand apology to arrive. The cafe meeting cleared the fog, but it didn't close the wound. The next morning, I opened a blank document and wrote a letter I had never let myself write. I put every swallowed word on the page, the name on the card, the laugh that followed, the history beneath it. I wrote until my breathing slowed. Then I printed it once and slipped it into a plain folder I keep for things that keep me. Boundaries are not performances, they are practices. I repeated that as I did small things well. I went to work, kept my appointments, brought my own lunch. I didn't chase explanations. I didn't audition for a place at their table. The quiet was not punishment. It was repaired up by midweek. The phone calmed. A few messages still came, some warm, some stiff, but I waited before answering. When I finally replied, I kept it simple. I need time. I'm willing to talk, but not to pretend. I sent the same words to my son, then turned the phone face down and let the room be still. The therapist I had not seen in a year fit me in for Friday afternoon. I arrived early and told the story without decoration. She asked where I felt the shame in my body. I laughed once and then cried because I knew. My hands, I said. They shake when I think of that card. She nodded. What do your hands want now? I looked down. To hold a boundary and keep it. We made a plan. That was not dramatic. No surprise confrontations. No long speeches. No public reckoning. Just small changes. No stepping into rooms where I am invited only for display. No smoothing over the roughness others lay at my feet. No saying yes when the cost is suspect. She asked if I needed an apology to move forward. I told the truth. I need honesty more than apology, and consistency more than both. That weekend I cooked for myself and turned off the television. I read the letter aloud once, not for effect but for clarity, then placed it back in the folder. The apartment felt bigger when I finished, as if standing inside my own voice returned square footage I didn't know I'd lost. On Sunday night Michael called. I answered. He sounded careful, like someone crossing a floor that might creak. I talked to her, he said. She wants to speak with you. I took a breath. I will meet with her, I said, but not in a place that celebrates people and hides their choices. He was quiet. Where? Then, I thought of rooms where power doesn't announce itself. A community center. A small office. Neutral ground. He agreed, without pushing. Thank you for hearing me, he said. Thank you for trusting me. We chose Wednesday at 3. The side office by the gym. A door that sticks unless you lift and pull. Nothing fancy. Just the table, 2 chairs, and the truth. The next morning I sent a message to the number he gave me. It was brief. I'm willing to talk. No crowd. No defensiveness. Acknowledge what happened and we can begin. She wrote back, I understand. I didn't read meaning into it. Understanding is not the same as changing. I used the days before the meeting to practice what I wanted to hold. When my mind rehearsed old arguments, I stood up, washed a dish, and named what mattered. Respect, clarity.com. When my chest tightened, I walked the block and repeated one line under my breath. I decide how I am treated by what I accept. The sentence was not a threat to anyone. It was a promise to myself. There were moments I doubted the quieter road. A friend told me I should have made a scene, should have raised my voice and made them feel it. I understood the pull, but I knew the cost. Scenes end with applause or silence. Repairs end with changed behavior. I wasn't after noise. I was after change. On Thursday I opened the folder and read the letter one last time. I copied one line onto an index card. I am not asking to be honored. I am asking to be treated. I placed the card in my purse. I did not bring the letter. An hour before the meeting, I tidied the apartment and watered the plants. Then I stood at the mirror and practiced 3 short phrases I could say without shaking. It happened. It mattered. It can change. I repeated them until they felt like mine. When it was time to go, I locked the door and stepped into the hallway. I wasn't rehearsing a speech. I was keeping a promise, not to my son, not to his new family, to the woman who left the reception without breaking, who sat in her car until her hands stilled, who deserves a life where dignity does not have to be defended at every doorway. I took the bus. I carried the index card. I did not carry shame. The repairs had begun, and no one had to clap to make them real. Quiet and steady. The office smelled faintly of floor wax and stale coffee. A folding table sat in the middle, 2 chairs on either side. I arrived early, sat down, and placed my purse beside me. The index card inside was there if I needed it, though I hoped I wouldn't. I folded my hands and waited. She came in 3 minutes late, shoulders stiff, eyes red from lack of sleep. She wasn't in designer silk now, just a plain blouse and slacks, as if stripping away the armor might soften what was to come. She hesitated before sitting, like the chair itself might reject her. Thank you for meeting me, she said. Her voice was quieter than I'd ever heard it. I nodded once. We're here, let's talk. Silence stretched. She looked down at her hands, then back at me. I owe you an apology. I let the words settle. An apology can be air or stone depending on how it's laid. For what, exactly? I asked. She flinched. For the name card, for the laughter, for the way I treated you from the beginning. I watched her carefully. Do you know why it mattered? Her throat worked. Because it was cruel. Because it embarrassed you. I shook my head. Because it reduced me to an idea. A stereotype. Something small enough to mock. And once someone writes you into that box, they stop seeing the person in front of them. She didn't answer. Her eyes filled, but she blinked hard and kept them steady. I could tell this wasn't a language she was fluent in yet. Do you think it was a joke? I asked. She swallowed. At the time, yes. Now, no. It was me being arrogant. It was me being thoughtless. I leaned forward slightly. Arrogance is not thoughtlessness. It is knowing the effect and choosing it anyway. Her lips parted, then closed. No defense came. The quiet pressed in on us until I broke it. I don't need speeches, I said. I don't need tears. What I need is clarity. If respect isn't possible, then honesty will do. I can live without approval. I cannot live with contempt. She nodded slowly, almost mechanically, but something in her expression shifted. As if the air around us had changed. I can do better, she whispered. Not to me, I corrected. To yourself. Because how you treat me is how you treat anyone you believe has less power. That doesn't just stain me. It stains you. The room felt heavier after I said it, but also cleaner. Like storm clouds moving on, leaving behind air you can breathe again. I don't know how to fix this, she admitted. You don't fix it, I replied. You practice it, consistently. Respect is not an apology, it's a pattern. We sat there for a long moment, neither of us moving. I could hear the faint squeak of sneakers in the gym down the hall, the hum of fluorescent lights, life going on outside our fragile bubble. She took a breath. What do you want from me? I thought of the letter I had written and folded away. The words that poured out in private. I didn't want to recite them now. They were mine. I want you to stop performing goodness while practicing contempt, I said. I want you to treat me as family not because you love me, but because you love him. Her face broke then. The mask slipping. I do love him. Then learn to love. What shaped him? I said softly. She looked down, pressing her palms flat on the table as if grounding herself. I'll try. I shook my head gently. Don't try. Decide. And then live with that decision. The weight in the room shifted. The air didn't feel quite so tight. Something in her posture gave way, not fully, but enough. When she finally stood, she looked smaller than when she walked in. Not defeated. Just unguarded. Thank you for meeting me, she said again. I nodded. Thank you for listening. She hesitated, then added, I want to do better. This time, I believed her, not because the words were strong, but because the silence around them was heavier than any performance could carry. After she left, I remained in the chair. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel vindicated. What I felt was the quiet relief of someone who had spoken her truth without shouting, who had demanded respect without begging for it. When I walked out of the building, the air had shifted. The sky was the same dull gray it had been an hour earlier, but it felt different somehow, lighter, as if weather doesn't always change above us. Sometimes it changes inside us. That day, the forecast shifted, not toward reconciliation, not yet, but toward possibility. And possibility, I realized, is a kind of weather too. Months passed, and the noise of the wedding faded into something smaller, like an echo you can only hear if you stop and listen for it. Life found its rhythm again. Work, bills, groceries, phone calls with Michael that no longer carried tension. In every pause, it wasn't that everything was fixed. It was that I had stopped expecting repair to come as a single event. It came instead in gestures, inconsistencies, in the small details you barely notice until you realize you haven't felt that sting in a while. The first time I joined them for dinner after the wedding, I noticed the table. No name cards, just plates and glasses. My seat was between my son and a younger cousin. Nothing symbolic, just ordinary, and ordinary can be a miracle after humiliation. Vanessa moved differently too. She asked if I wanted more salad, if I liked the roast, if I was comfortable where I was sitting. They were simple questions, but they weren't dripping with performance anymore. They were just questions. At first, I answered cautiously, as if every kindness might come with a hidden hook. But over time, I saw the difference. It wasn't that she'd become warm, it was that she'd become aware. And awareness is a beginning. Michael noticed it too. One evening, when he walked me to my car, he said quietly, "She's trying, Mom, I can see it." I nodded. "I know. I can see it too." The weeks turned into months, and the space between us shifted. We weren't close, not yet, but we weren't adversaries either. We were something in between. Two women circling the same fire. Careful not to smother it, careful not to let it burn out. During those months, I realized something about myself. For years, I'd treated dignity like something fragile, easily taken away by someone else's cruelty. But walking out of that reception, and everything that followed, taught me something different. Dignity is not given. It's held, quietly, firmly, in the choices we make when no one is clapping. There were still moments that tested me. A relative's comment about fitting in, a story retold that left me invisible in the details. But I didn't fold. I didn't rush to defend myself or smooth the air. I let the words pass by like weather, knowing they couldn't touch what I'd built inside. 6 months after the wedding, Vanessa invited me to Sunday dinner at their apartment. "I'm cooking," she said over the phone. Her voice sounded nervous, almost tentative. "It probably won't be very good, but I'd like you to come." I agreed, not because I expected a feast, but because I understood the invitation for what it was. Not food, but effort. When I arrived, the kitchen was a mess. Pots stacked, flour on the counter, a roast that had probably stayed in the oven 10 minutes too long. She laughed awkwardly, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "It's not perfect," she said. "It doesn't have to be," I replied. We ate together, Michael, her, and me around a table that wobbled slightly with every movement. And for the first time, I saw something soften in her. She wasn't polished. She wasn't performing. She was just a woman trying, failing in small ways, and learning to laugh at herself instead of at others. When the meal ended, she surprised me by asking, "Would you come again next week?" "I want to keep trying," I smiled. "I'd like that." Driving home that night, I thought about the card, about the word charity written beneath my name. At the time, it felt like a brand I would carry forever. But now, 6 months later, it had become something else. A measure, a reminder, not of what I was, but of what I would no longer accept. Sometimes, dignity looks like walking out of a room. Other times it looks like walking back in with your head high, your voice steady, and your boundaries intact. I no longer saw myself as the woman at table 12. I no longer felt the sting when I imagined that laughter. I had given it its place in the past, and I had taken my place in the present. And in that present, what we built wasn't spectacle. It wasn't reconciliation wrapped in ribbons. It was something quieter, steadier, a pattern of respect where contempt had once lived. A new kind of family that didn't erase the past but learned to step around it. That's the truth of survival, I think. Not that you erase the scar, but that you build something strong enough to hold it. The night I walked out of the wedding, I thought I was leaving behind humiliation, but now I see what I was really leaving behind was permission. Permission for anyone to decide my worth. Permission for anyone to write my story in their handwriting. The weather changed that day, and it hasn't gone back. What we build now is quiet, and quiet, I've learned, is strong. Asterisk, if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from.